Now, the greatest idea of all time. Stay tuned for
From the Trenches of Hollywood.
Here are your guru guides from the A-list to the D and everything in between. It's Ted and Craig.
Hello and welcome to From the Trenches of Hollywood. I'm Ted Davies.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Craig. Glad to have you on this beautiful morning here for me anyway. How's it for you?
It's beautiful here in the 70s, sunny. Lake's gorgeous. Great Michigan day. So great Michigan
sounds
day.
Great, great. So we don't ever talk about what the season actually is, but we talk about the weather. And
yeah, right.
People
How
can
much
get an
snow's
idea.
on the ground or yeah.
For
right.
me, it's the same pretty much. But
I know it's got to be boring, man. That's got to be kind of boring, and it's got some benefits. But I like the seasons. So
I don't like being cold.
That's one thing I don't like. But it's all what you make of it, right?
Yeah. But, today it's going to be 115 degrees in Palm Springs.
Well, that's a desert, though. I mean, people don't know. That's like how far is it? An hour, 2 hours outside?
A little over
LA?
an hour. Well, from LA, from me, it's about an hour, 20 minutes. LA, closer to 2 hours.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
it's right in the Mojave, man. It is hot.
That's it.
It is hot.
So the guy that we're going to be talking to today, though, doesn't have that problem at all because he's from the UK in Manchester, which is it's
doesn't have the problem of what? Okay, the weather. Okay,
yes,
all right.
Pretty cold and damp there, and it's pretty very drab. Michigan is a sunny oasis compared to some of the days over in the UK, so I can attest to that. So, and you know how some of our weather is. So, but Glenn B Fleming is a prolific author and artist that I'm been very blessed to be part of in business as well as podcasting and all different kinds of things. And we're going to be talking to him today. So looking forward to it.
Very cool. Yeah, I can't wait to meet. I've been hearing about this guy for a few years now from you. Never have met. Seen him on your podcast together. Your conspiracies.
Yes, the truth mongers. Yes.
Yes, love it. Little plug there. Check out the Truth Mongers, everybody. You can find that on where? YouTube.
Ted Davies Artistry. Yep, on YouTube.
There you go. Speaking of which, make sure you reach out to us with your questions. I'm going to hold off on questions today and save them for next time because we want to get to our guest, Glenn, who's waiting patiently. So let's bring him in, man.
Let's bring him in. Hey, Glenn, what's up?
How are you doing, fellas?
Glenn, great to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Craig. Yeah, nice to talk to you last year.
You too.
Good to hear that you've been hearing about me for several years because I think I've only known Craig Ted about 3 weeks, but
about 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. Old friends. What's the weather like there now, man? Is it raining?
The weather here is very drab and raining. No, I'm joking. It's really good. It's really nice. It's warm.
Good.
Listen,
what do you consider warm though? Was it 60 degrees?
Oh yeah, it must be probably 65 today. That's really warm for us. That's really great.
It's great. Well, now you get to meet Craig. So now UK to California. This is the technology that we have. So
great to meet you. So where exactly are you? What city?
I'm in Manchester in the northwest.
Okay.
It's very nice. England is the best place on earth, and then the United States.
Yeah.
The United States is the only place I would go and live, other than here.
That's a statement. The gas is cheaper here. That's why. Right.
It just went up today to, I think it must be $3 a liter.
Yeah.
Not a gallon.
It's unbelievable.
Right.
It's crazy.
So we have really nothing to complain about here.
No.
Yeah. So, but
first world problems, man.
Yeah. Right.
First world problems. Right. So, Glenn, well, let's preface this a little bit, everybody, for everyone a little bit. Glenn is an author. He is a nonfiction author, historical writer, investigative writer. We've not talked to someone of your caliber on the show before. We've had a lot of fiction on the show.
Yeah.
That kind of what drives us. But what's so important is that so much of this fiction, even some that I've been brought in to write, has been based on reality, real things. And So it's great to have you here. Tell
you.
us a little bit about yourself. Give everybody like the 30-second Glenn pitch.
Oh, well, I'm a writer, artist, publisher, photographer, painter, playwright. I do lots of things. I've spent 40 years in graphics, covering all those kind of things like illustration and making little documentaries and all this kind of stuff. And as Ted said, I've written 10, it might be 11 books, I'm not sure, published those. I write about different subjects, soccer, science fiction, JFK, kids books. I wrote a book about D-Day. My father was a paratrooper on D-Day. I wrote a book about NASA, about the astronauts who didn't go to the moon. And I like to travel. And a few years ago, I went to Easter Island, to Rapa Nui, and I've written a book about that. I'm making a film about that from the film I took there. I've got 6-7 hours worth of film to edit down. I published... can I show it? This book, about my visits to Jack Kirby's house. You know, Jack Kirby created he created comics just about, didn't he? Captain America, Fantastic Four, all those things. And in the late 80s and early 90s, I went to see him a couple of times, and I also videoed it, and I've also made a documentary about those visits where you see me talking to Jack. I published magazines. This was one about British comics that I used to publish called Crikey. I'm publishing Comics Unlimited with Ted at the moment, and I've done a lot of things. Yeah, there it is. Issue 9 is out now. Get it on Amazon.
Fantastic.
Okay,
book.
so the 30 seconds is obviously longer in the UK.
Okay.
He's just teasing you.
No, listen. Well, okay, it's valid. You've done a lot. Let's get into some of your right. I mean, let's talk about your inspirations for some of this stuff. It seems it's such a wide variety of what you've covered. Have these been subjects that you were just passionate about, or that you stumbled upon? You talk about a visit. You visited the island. You're doing a project on that. Was that pre-planned, or did you visit the island and say, whoa, this is amazing, I need to do something about this?
No, what happened was, as I've only got 30 seconds, when I was about 12, my English teacher, Mr. Clarkson, read as a book called The Kon-Tiki Expedition by Thor Heyerdahl, the Norwegian explorer guy, and this stuck in my mind. And Thor Heyerdahl went to Rapa Nui, or Easter Island, and he stayed there a year. And he stayed there a year in the year I was born, which was 1955. So things like that always get in my head when I'm sort of involved in a way. Do you understand what I mean? Mm-hmm. Anyway, so many years later, I was single. I had some money, and I thought, where have I not been where I really want to go? Easter Island. So I went there for 3 weeks. And it's an incredible place, and I kept an extensive diary, and I based the book on my diary and historical facts about the place. I took over 1,000 photographs. I took 6 hours of film, as I said, and I'm putting the DVD. Well, trying to find time to put the DVD together. But the way I write is I've written a lot of science fiction. I've watched a lot of science fiction, and I've read a lot of science fiction. And I like to write science fiction, but I also like to write the historical things, like with the JFK thing, you know.
Right.
The thing I remember about the JFK situation was I was almost 9 when it happened. There's 2 things I remember from that weekend. One is my mother and father crying because Kennedy had been killed, and the other one was Lee Oswald being shot. And I remember my dad very distinctly saying to me mum, because I was only 9, he said to me mum, they've done that to shut him up. And that stuck in my mind. And then 10 years later, 1973, I read an article in a magazine, a London magazine called Time Out, and it was going over the magic bullet theory and all that, Jack Ruby and David Ferry and all these people. And it had a bibliography. So I got all these books, and I read all these books, and I got the Warren Commission report, and I read that. And I'm probably one of the only few people in the world who've read the entire 26 volumes of evidence, but I've been through it.
Wow.
And then 5 years later, the House Select Committee on Assassinations were doing a reenactment of the shooting, and I went to Dallas, to Dealey Plaza, to be there. And then I've always been fascinated with Americana, so that's the space program. The moon landing was happening while I was growing up. I was 14 when Neil and Buzz went to the moon, and then years later, I did some research into it, and I was finding out about I remember the Apollo fire, where the 3 astronauts died. So I just what I try and do is there must be, like with the JFK thing, there must be 500 or 1,000 books about where the bullets came from, who fired the bullets, and all that kind of thing. So I like to put a bit of a slant on my writing. So I wrote my first book about the Kennedy assassination from the point of view of Lee Oswald. So you're in Lee Oswald's head. Now, there will have been a lot of things that we know that he wouldn't at the time, because he'd have got a Greyhound bus somewhere, and all that kind of thing. So I wrote it from his point of view. The next book I wrote about that and published was about his actual involvement with various government agencies and being in Russia and all that kind of thing. But I like to put a slant on my writing. And to get back to the NASA thing, again, there's probably 500 books about moon landings and all that kind of thing, all very interesting. So I wrote about the astronauts who didn't go to the moon, who would have gone to the moon, would have walked on the moon, and they died in training, in plane crashes and car crashes. So I wrote about that because I like to put a spin on it. And it's the same with the soccer book I wrote, which was the first book I had published, called 1010s. And it's when I played football to quite a decent level, not professional, but quite a decent level, I was always number 10. Number 10 was my shirt. So I wrote, so that again, there's 500 books about soccer. So I wrote a book about the number 10 shirt, and did 10 players, 10 like Pele, and
That's cool.
Right, Pele. You probably heard of these people.
Yeah. We call him Pele here, but yeah.
It's Pele, and he was number 10. The English players were number 10, and I wrote about 10 players who wore the number 10 shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So I
like it. So you answered the question, and I see that all of these things are a bit of your nostalgia, a bit of your history, a bit of your childhood. It seems like that every one of these subjects made an impression on you as a young man, and led you to write about it, which is great. A lot of people, they want to write about what they know or what they're interested in so they can learn more about it, which leads me to this. When you were writing the Oswald perspective, what kind of material was available for you research wise to be able to get into his head a little bit? Were there many personal documents that you were able to get to access to get an idea of what was going on in his head?
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in Life magazine that I don't believe. They published his diary, and I don't believe it's written by him. So I learned a lot of that, what wouldn't be in his head, if that makes sense. Again, it's that twist. We've all seen the newsreels of him talking and all this kind of thing. But what I do, I have I don't know what you call it, but a kind of mind that is good at marker pieces and getting to the next part, and I lay it out of what, like, imagine him in the Dallas police for the 2 days he was alive when he was arrested. I mark out the hours and what he would be doing at those times, and I link it with the testimony of the police officers who spoke to him, and I also link it in with the footage of him. We see of him walking down the corridors, being asked the questions. So I'll link it all together. That's how I wrote that. And then I know a lot about him. I know a lot about that situation. So it was difficult at times not to put something in that he wouldn't know.
Sure.
You see what I mean? And that to me was the discipline of writing the book. I could easily write a book about the shots and the bullets and the car and all this kind of thing. That's easy. That's all documented. But I wanted to put some kind of different spin on it. And I know a lot about the situation. I know a lot about him. And I mean, he's only 24 when he died, just 24 when he was murdered. So there's not really a lot to find out in terms of, his army and all the Marines and all that stuff.
So you kind of mentioned it there, especially with this book, how you laid it out and followed that specific timeline. We talk a lot on this show about styles and processes and creating your material. So I would assume that a lot of these, being from a historical perspective to a degree, are they all pretty much a linear following historical timeline, and you're just expanding on those bullet points of what was happening.
Yeah. You can't really do it any other way. I mean, there were I think it's 7 astronauts who would have gone to the moon. They would have flown, and so it's easy to, when you research it, you find out what crews they were on, who they were working with, because in those days NASA would change the crews around. If somebody get injured or somebody the management would see that these guys got on better with the other guy. They changed the crews around. Excuse me. And so from that point of view, like with the Oswald thing, it's easier to plot the line, but it's linear, like you say, because it happened. You know, there's nothing to, apart from,
Sure.
I'll contradict myself here, there's nothing to make up other than the fact that obviously nobody is in Lee Oswald's head, and I have to put myself, so he's thinking what I probably would have thought, because nobody knows.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a bit of a speculatory element to what you're placing in that particular book, but you're following a historically accurate timeline of where he would be, when he would be there. So there's a little latitude there, but still, for the most part, I don't know, how would you classify that book? You know, it's not truly a full non-fiction work if we're creating this.
I don't know. I think I would call it. I think I would call it faction.
Faction.
That's a great.
Okay.
That's a great
I like
term.
it.
I do. Yeah, I like that. I think hashtag faction. That's it. I like it.
I like it. Yes, very
great,
cool. So I want to touch on this. Great, you mentioned that you did a piece on D-Day. Your father was a paratrooper, and yesterday being the anniversary.
78 years. I wrote this book. Published a couple of years ago.
It's a fantastic book. I've read it.
And I got my illustrations on it.
I see.
Yep.
What I did there was my dad died in 1981. And I'm older now than my dad was. I'm the older man. Anyway, I decided to, as you both will know, because you'll know people who are veterans, they never talk about it. They never give you any details. They don't, and I fully understand why. Well, my dad was the same. He would tell me things, but he wouldn't tell me the real things, you know. So what happened was, my dad was a paratrooper on D-Day. He was 19 years old. It was 3 weeks before his 20th birthday, and he's jumping out of a C-47 into that. You know, I mean, and the reason it's called 8 seconds is that's the time. That's the time. I get this. This is scary. Apart from all the flak and the ACAT going off around the aircraft and the other aircraft crashing and disintegrating and all that, when he left the door, it took him 8 seconds to get to the ground, because they were that low. They were 500 feet. They were supposed to fly at 1,000 feet, but they soon learned that the longer the parachuter is in the air, the more of a target he is. And also, the higher, as you will know, the higher a plane flies, it takes that much longer to pass. That's a longer target. So my dad's parachute and the guys who jumped with him barely opened. It literally broke their fall. They jumped out. 8 seconds later, he was on the ground. But unfortunately, my dad wasn't on the ground. He was in a flooded field and he nearly drowned. And he's because Rommel flooded all the fields because he knew the paratroopers would be coming, and he landed in a flooded field, and so he goes down with all his equipment. He wasn't expecting this. 4 o'clock in the morning, cold, and he hits water and goes in, and his canopy comes down. So he's got all this gear on, and a canopy on his head, and he's got to get his knife and get out. And I just wanted to document it. And what I've done it's the same with the Oswald thing. I'm sort of put myself there in my dad's place, and I linked it up with actual events, you know, that I knew would happen, and he would have to get to, you know, because just an example, 650 men from his battalion jumped, and only 150 got to the place, their mission, their target, because they were misdropped and all that kind of thing. And then of the 150 that attacked the Merville gun battery, only 50 survived, and he was one.
Wow, fascinating. Well,
Just,
amazing story. And that is called 8 Seconds, that
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
Where can we find your books? Where can people get them?
They're all on Amazon. You can get them all on Amazon. They're all there waiting.
It's interesting that a couple of these topics that you've touched on, I too have written or researched to a degree, including the Kennedy assassination.
Right. Okay.
One of the first projects that I was brought in to adapt was a documentary on a claimed assassin from the Kennedy event, a man by the name of James Files.
Oh,
Have you come across this character?
yes.
I knew you guys were going to have a good time.
Am I allowed to say that I wouldn't trust anything he said, even if he told me his name?
Who would trust this guy? It's an amazing story that he tells.
Yeah.
But there's some real stretches in it.
Yeah. Just one or two. Yeah.
It was there was a documentary film produced by a man named Bob Vernon, and he made it with Dick Clark Productions back in
really
in the early 90s. I think is when they produced that documentary, and they brought me in to adapt it. And there was very little material to research on James Files, which also led to nothing to corroborate his story.
See, what happens? You see, what happens is that people come forward and say they were there or they did this, and it seems like the entire community of people, researchers. I don't look into it now. I'm done with it now. I've had enough. But the researchers, they go, "Oh, have you seen this guy?" And they chase him for 5 years, and then at the end of the 5 years, they find out he was a fraud. And then the investigation has gone cold for 5 years. Do you understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Some people call it limited hangout, and it's like the ripple effect. You know, it never leaves the lake, does it? The ripple, you know, it just goes out and out and out and out, and just carries on forever. And what these people do, they chase these people and say, "Oh, this guy was on the grassy knoll. Let's go." So they take a year finding where he lives. Then they take another year trying to get him to talk. And then when he does, he wasn't really there.
Yeah, has nothing. Yeah, exactly.
Distractions. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and then again, you know, so it's one of the greatest conspiracies of them all, right up there with UFOs.
The conspiracy is the cover-up.
Yes, so there's always going to be people chasing something down a rabbit hole on this one.
Yeah.
That, and then the astronauts get the Apollo. I love the fact that you chose. So what you're pointing out something here really unique. Let me touch on that again. Back to style and writing. Is you're finding subjects that you're interested in and have a passion for, and you're approaching them from a unique storytelling position and giving it a different take. Like you said, there's hundreds of books written on every one of these subjects, but no one has told the story this way. And do you find that you spend a lot of time in the beginning figuring out how you're going to get that unique perspective when telling the story, or are these just ideas that do they just come to you immediately when you feel like you found a subject?
Like you said, I've always had these subjects in my mind, this nostalgia, like you say. But with the astronauts, I was fortunate enough to speak with Alan Shepard, first American in space, 5th man on the moon, Charlie Duke, 10th man on the moon, and Gene Cernan, who was the last one on the moon on Apollo 17. He was the commander of Apollo 17. I spoke with him, and I interviewed these people, and these are like my heroes, you know. So I write about my heroes. I'm not sure whether Lee Oswald is a hero, but to me, Lee Oswald is a much maligned character in history, if not the most maligned person, because I'll just say this: he didn't shoot anybody that day, right. So, but with the astronauts, there's those guys. I don't want to talk about the ones now. I'm not undermining what they do, but those guys were Christopher Columbus, weren't they? And Marco Polo. You know, they were the true frontiersmen, weren't they? You know, I mean, the moon. I mean, you know, the moon. and 3 people have been twice. I mean, get that one, you know. And I just find it fascinating that I like to write about people. I like to write about people, and because people are the most fascinating thing on the planet as far as I'm concerned, and we all get caught up in these events, and I'm fascinated with the way people look at those events and what they were doing, and a lot of people just don't care, do they? When I was researching Kennedy, I was driving everybody crazy with it, telling them all about it for years and years and years, and nobody believed me. Well, how could a guy who lives in Manchester, England, know so much about this subject that nobody cares about? And then a year later, when it came on the television, and all the things I was saying were being presented, they said, "Oh yeah, we knew that. Yeah, I told you.
You told them, yeah, right.
You know, it was me. Oh, well, you might have mentioned it. No, I bored you to death with it, you know." So,
yeah.
So I do like to write about these things. Yeah, these I like to read. I've read over 600 books in my life, and I'm just sorry I've not logged them all. Right, and I just like to read, and I think reading is the second greatest, maybe the third greatest thing that you can do. And it's just such a wonderful privilege to this will sound corny, and I don't care, to be alive right now and to have lived through what I've lived through, and you as well. But you know, I mean, I don't know. I know Teddy. I don't know how old you are, Craig, but I'm 67, and I've lived all through the space age, right? All through it. Sputnik was the first one. I was 2. I don't remember it, but it was there. And I just think these things are just fantastic things. We've got such fantastic things to read and to look at. And the sadness, just to go off track a bit, the sadness of the internet is that nobody read before the internet. And now you've got every book in the world at the touch of a button. People still don't read them. You know, I can't work it out why people don't read. But we're going off track. Sorry, we're going off on one there.
No, it's good. It's good.
I think a book is an investment, and it's sometimes time, and people today just feel like that. 7 seconds is my attention span, and then I move on.
That's really sad. You see, to me, there's nothing greater than holding a book. You know, a physical book. You know, I don't have an iPad thing to read books on. I like the book. I like to hold the book.
Me too.
We're tactile creatures, you know. We like to touch things, and it's just a wonderful thing. And to have your own published and hold.
Oh
is wonderful.
It's unbelievable.
That's wonderful.
You know? Yeah, I'm with you on that. For me, it's if someone brings me a screenplay or sends me a screenplay, I have to print it if I'm actually going to read it. I do not like sitting on my computer trying to read their work.
Yeah, and you're going to put notes on it, aren't you, and things like that, and highlight things.
Exactly.
Or changes. Yeah, when you email me changes, I print it out too. I'm constantly doing that.
But think of the satisfaction as well, Craig, that if you get that manuscript on an iPad, you can just turn it off. But think of the satisfaction of picking it up and throwing it in the bin.
I do like to carry it around.
One of the questions I've got for Glenn is I never asked you this, but what's your format for writing? Do you end up having a small, like a journal, or what do you do when you write, or what did you do?
It depends what I'm writing, but if I'm writing fiction, I will keep notes. I do that on the computer. I used to write it, with handball, and then I bought a typewriter. I told you the other day, I've still got the typewriter I bought. So I've gone from writing longhand to typewriters to computers. I work in Word, but what I do is a lot of the time, if I've got a scene, I'll write the dialogue, because I know who's saying what. Like in dialogue, you can soon lose who's talking because you don't say this person and they walked over to this place. And because I'm writing it, I know who it is, and I'll write the dialogue down, and then I'll fill in the, you went over to the chair and sat down and whatever. That's the way I write the fiction. But with the faction, I just imagine what the guy's doing or did. And with the non-fiction, there's obviously it's more disciplined, because there are set parameters of what you're writing about. If you're writing about going to the moon, you're going to the moon. So you need to there's different disciplines, and I like that. It's like with drawing. Many years ago, I used to draw Postman Pat. Have you heard of Postman Pat?
Mm-mm.
He's a cartoon character. He's like, I don't know, he's a children's cartoon character. I used to draw that. Then the next day I'd be designing a brochure or a magazine. Then the next day I'd be doing a photo shoot. And then the next day I'd be working on a documentary. So I've been really fortunate in the 40 years in graphics that just about every day, or at least every week, I would have a different job, different discipline to look at. It never got boring. And it was really good. But with the writing thing, it depends what I'm writing about. Like I said about the Rapa Nui book, that's taken from my notes, my extensive diary,
Mm-hmm.
and I mixed the history in with it. So I can't change the history, and it becomes a mix, you know.
Right. Well, you did the same thing with the Jack Kirby book. In fact,
Yeah.
in the book, you've got your notes
Yes.
as part of the pages, which is just, I think it's going to be the truest form of documentary on anything that you could do for Jack Kirby. I think that you just did such a service for the public that people will learn from it later. You know,
Thanks. Yeah,
so
I think what the thing with the Kirby thing is that it helps being a writer, and I was there, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to get those thoughts down, because a lot of people would forget things, and people can't write. They can't write. So I can. So I was fortunate. I filmed it. I put it down. I took my notes. I produced the notes in the book, like Ted says, and then I like to give the whole thing. You know, I like to give the whole experience. And part of my experience of meeting Jack Kirby was writing those notes. So you get to see them in the book.
I look forward to seeing that book that you guys are talking about here. I love the idea of you're combining your sources, or publishing your source, your created source within the pages. That's fantastic.
See, I think it's like when you'll know that you two guys are writers. You know this. You've got to write you got to be interested in it.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's just a job.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have written about things. I wrote something about gardening. I mean, who wants the garden? But I had to do it because I got paid. But
I've been there.
Most of the time,
been there a lot.
Most of the time, I've been fortunate that I would write about things that I enjoy. You know, so I like to put all the elements in there. One of the two
reasons I wanted to get you guys on together was because you both did documentaries. You both do documentaries, and you both are playwrights. And a lot of people don't realize that you are playwrights, both of you. And that's I really wanted to see you guys interact with that writing. That might need to be another show, but I think that's something I really want. You know, you guys to.
Let me just say that my claim to be a playwright is true, but I've not produced a play yet. But I'm writing the play, so I'm calling myself a playwright because I'm halfway through one and about to begin the other one. One's a comedy and one isn't.
You're doing it. That's great. We'll say this again, back to process, something that you mentioned earlier when you were talking about writing your fiction. Great piece of advice for people that you just threw out there, whether you know it or not. And that is true. You keep moving forward, and you do it by writing the dialogue, and you keep moving forward, just the dialogue. You go back in, you polish it up, you clean it up, you add the log lines, you add the action, you add whatever. But that's a great tip right there. You know, for some people who might get hung up on elements, it's just keep firing out the dialogue.
And the thing about writing a play, and I'm not saying it's easy because it's not, but it's mainly the dialogue. You don't have to describe the room they're in, or you might do a little description of the room they're in
once
exactly. And you don't have to write, he contemplated reaching for his revolver and shooting the guy in the head as he went to sit down in the chair. You don't have to write that. You just you move to the chair, you know what I mean? And it's a great thing. It's great. Writing and reading and drawing is just the best. You know, I love it.
It's like breathing. Yeah.
So one of the things that I do most in my job as a writer is I'm brought in to clean up dialogue. And so and a lot of times that's all that I need to clean up, because some people they're just locked into this visual part of the screenplay or that they're working on. They've created amazing look and feel and movement and action and all of that. It's just that they struggle with the dialogue. And so there's all kinds of writers out
Well,
there.
well, I'm worried now, Craig, that you're going to go and read all my stuff and say, "What the hell is this guy doing?" You know. So
No. I no.
It's the stuff we send him. All right.
I could just hear all my books rattling in your bin.
I doubt that highly.
Yeah, no. Well,
No, but
we'll have to continue the screen writing talk another time for sure, because we are out of time, if you can
Okay.
believe it. We just blew right through that 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I want to keep talking to you about Jack Kirby, actually, but I'm going to have to read this book so that I can get back on with you and discuss it a little bit further, because that one is pretty much a biography piece, right? You're doing a biography,
Well,
and are you talking about the moment you're with him at that time?
Again, the book that, as Ted will testify, that the book is it's called A Personal Journey. It's my journey to him. So it's more about me than it is about him, but he's the star. And it's the same with the Rapa Nui book. I've called that Rapa Nui A Personal Journey because it's my journey to the place. And I talk about Mr. Clarkson reading the book and all that kind of thing. And I write for me. I write what I want to read, and that's another cliche, but I write what I want to read.
That's great.
And I'm really proud of them. I'm not saying they're any good enough, but I'm really proud that I've got it together and published them and got them out there. I mean, going to Easter Island, you know, from my point of view, is a great shakes because it's the remotest inhabited place on Earth, and I got there. So, but everybody can just get on an aircraft and go. That's all I do.
You said it. Well, again, thanks a lot for being here. Some great advice you gave, actually, today. Not only how to push forward and just keep writing the dialogue, write what you're passionate about, look for a unique way to tell the story, a different perspective. You even did it with the Jack Kirby, these personal journeys, testaments that you're putting together. It's gives a different spin or aspect, even point of view of that often overtold story. So it's that's great advice for everyone. Thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
What time is it there right now? I mean, how many hours ahead are you from me?
9, I think. It's 12 minutes past 5 in the evening.
Well, happy hour has begun. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to having you back on the show.
Sure, and whenever you want. Thank you for having me. Yeah,
definitely. And you know, Glenn, you know, I'll be in touch with you. So
yeah,
thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Glenn.
Yep, we'll talk to you soon, man. Thanks again. Awesome. Well, at least you had a chance to meet the man now behind the myth. So
yeah, no, so good stuff right there. A fascinating person, just and in his
wealth
interest
of knowledge,
and
just scrape the surface of it. You know, the next time we'll have him on, we'll really, talk a little bit more about process and, really what makes him tick to get that pen to paper.
We'll have him back. Folks, listen,
Awesome.
Send us your questions. If you have anything for Glenn, any advice of your own you want to spread, send us the questions or the info. You've got our personal handles right there. You see at Craig Hollywood, TedDaviesArtistry.com. Also get us at From the Trenches of Hollywood on Facebook and at Hollywood Trenches on Instagram. That's going to do it for us today. I hope you enjoyed the show.
Yep, I know I did. So got to get writing.
Yeah, me too today. Me too. Me too. All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you all next time. Take care.
See ya.